The West has always outperformed the Russians in technologies that involve soft power. The Russians, for understandable reasons, did not have these technologies. Therefore, they resorted to their own practice, which they used everywhere. They simply bought off part of the elite, drew them into corruption. The Americans, on the other hand, created networks, NGOs, media, what they did here, what they did in Ukraine and in other countries. And through this, using the technology of color revolutions, they achieved success. Seems like the Ukrainians' argument was actually quite close to the truth, that Russia is non-competitive. In technologies, of course, in the technologies of color revolutions, electoral technologies, it is non-competitive. In my opinion, Russia's main problem, not only today, but throughout the post-Soviet reality, is the following. In order for Russia to have soft power, it needs to have a project. It needs to offer a project. It needs to have a tradition. But it doesn't have this tradition, and it never did. There is a Russian saying that reveals a lot. There is no remedy against a crowbar. What's soft power? Here is a tank. Here is your Oreshnik. This is their hard power. From Peter the Great onward, this has been a European state, a standard European state, right up until the Soviet Union. They were just like the other European states that existed during this time period, only slightly backward, because it had a huge territory and developing in that direction was difficult, and so on. But it was a model. It was an ordinary European state of that time. Accordingly, it did not have its own independent project. The only independent project it ever had was the Soviet Union, which was different from what was happening in the West at that moment. It was westernization and catching up with the West, so it could not have had a real project of its own. Peter carried out his imperial project. During the reign of Peter I, he was titled emperor and Russia's territory was called an empire. The first Russian empire was created. A window to the west was cut open. What more project did he need to carry out? As for the Soviet Union, that was a completely unique project. I want to do a whole series of programs about the Soviet Union, because it really was a unique project that offered the world an alternative history, an alternative path of development. Incidentally, the Americans also played a role in the formation and development of the Soviet project in terms of industrialization. American industrial companies, engineers, in short, highly qualified workers and so on, participated in this economic miracle. And indeed, because at that time the rates of economic growth exceeded 25 to 30%.